Hey guys, Broke-Dad here. Today I'm going to show you how to make a hand-stained American flag. Stay tuned. The size of your flag will depend on the size of the union or the stars that you want to use. The standard for the United States flag is 19:10 for length to width. I had a stencil for the union that ended up allowing me to use a pre-cut 1.75-inch pine board for each stripe. I measured out the length using a straight edge, and I penciled in marks for cutting. I measured out 13 pieces at 3 feet each. You can use just about any type of saw to complete these cuts. For ease and a mechanical straightness, I used a table saw to make the cuts. You want to line the blade of the saw to the outside, aka the waste side of the piece. This means the side that is not going to be used in your project. Keep in mind, if you put the blade in the center of the marking line, you will lose the width of the blade in that wood. If you cut to the outside, you can make micro adjustments later with a saw, a planer, or by sanding. Once you have all 13 boards cut, go over each one with a higher grit sandpaper. Since this wood was already smooth, I didn't need to start with coarse or rough paper. Apply even pressure and sand in the direction of the grain. Use a tack cloth and wipe away the sanding dust. This keeps the surface even and allows for a more uniform application of the stain. I always recommend using pre-stained wood conditioner when possible. Pre-stain forces the small fibers in the wood to stand up, making it easier for sanding paper to make the surface even smoother, and therefore preparing the wood to accept the stain without blotching. Gently stir the contents of the pre-stain, and then apply it with a brush or a lint-free cloth. Don't be stingy and make sure you cover everything thoroughly. Allow the conditioner to settle for a few minutes before wiping away the excess with a clean cloth. Allow the conditioner time to dry. Then run your finger over the wood and you will feel the rough wood fibers that are sticking up. Run over the boards again with a high grit sandpaper and finish with a tack cloth. To start the staining process, I set the template for the union up and use painter's tape to block the portion that won't be blue. Stain is naturally going to absorb and can bleed into the area you don't want to color. To counter this, I find it best to brush close to the tape and pull away. This prevents too much stain from absorbing at the tape line. Apply the stain in the direction of the grain until everything is covered. Allow the stain a few minutes to soak in before wiping away the excess with a clean and lint-free cloth. When doing this, pull in the same direction each time from one end over the edge. This will even out the stain and prevent brush marks from showing. Allow the blue stain some time to dry before repeating the same steps with the red stain. I like to stain the sides of the piece the corresponding colors so that no unfinished pine shows when everything is put together. I like to allow the first coat approximately 48 hours to dry before applying another coat. Once the stain is dry, set up an area for gluing the pieces together. I'd like to note that you don't have to glue. You can always nail and screw a thin board along the back of the pieces. I think the glued method looks more crisp when done correctly. Lay down cardboard so that any glue drippings are easily disposed of. Taking a standard wood glue, apply a line on the top of one of the pieces. You can even out the glue with a small brush or the applicator tip of the glue bottle. Just make sure you clean the nozzle when you are done. In order to glue straight, I used an extra board at the end to line all the other boards up with. Set the pieces together and then clamp them tightly. Wipe away any glue that seeps out with a dry paper towel. To prevent the bottom of the piece from sticking to the cardboard, let the glue dry for a few minutes before sliding it to another area of the cardboard. I like to allow the glue several hours to dry to make sure everything cures. To start creating the union, or the part with the stars, use painter's tape to secure the template. Painter's tape has a lower adhesive rating and does not ruin the stencil or the stain when pulled off. Take a Dremel tool with a carving bit and carve away the blue stain. Start by following the outline of the star and then remove the center. The bit will respond to the grain of the wood. This means that when you are going with the grain, the bit will slide easier, as opposed to jerkier when going across the grain. I highly recommend wearing a respirator mask when doing this because it's creating fine particles that contain the stain in it. Remove the stencil and go over the union with a high-grain sandpaper. You only want to smooth out the edges of the stars, so you do not apply any pressure or you'll risk fading the blue stain. I glued and cured the top and bottom half of the flag separately to prevent bowing when clamping. At this point, you just glue the two parts together and clamp them like you did before. You can finish the project at this point, but if you want to protect the stain and bring a little bit of gloss out, I would recommend using a wipe-on polyurethane. Prior to applying the polyurethane, use a tack cloth to make sure there's no dust on the piece. Use a clean, lint-free cloth to apply the polyurethane. When applying, go in long, even strokes with the grain of the wood from one end to the other. Try not to overbrush or you will create bubbles. Allow the polyurethane to dry thoroughly before applying another coat. The more coats that you apply, the shinier the piece will become. If you want to make the finish look very smooth, take a high grit sandpaper, approximately 400 grit, and hand sand between coats. Be sure to use a tack cloth to wipe away any of the sand residue. Now you're ready to put the hardware on the back of the piece. The method in which you decide to hang is completely up to you. You can utilize the same techniques that are utilized when hanging art. Nowadays, a lot of people are paying several $100s for these kinds of pieces. You can do it yourself for relatively cheap, and these make wonderful gifts. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want to thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.